have all seen those ghost motorcycles gathering dust in a corner of the dealership, but where do they go when they disappear? The truth is a dark secret that salesmen fear to reveal. We have gone behind the scenes with hidden cameras to expose the financial credit trap, the brutal auctions where dreams on two wheels die for pennies, and the desperate commercial schemes they use to survive. Today, besides that, we will reveal the 5 motorcycles that are rotting in dealerships right now and that nobody wants to buy. Do not buy a bike until you know the truth hidden behind the graveyard of unsold dreams. Let's go. The floor plan, how inventory financing really works and why dealerships do not own the bikes on display. To understand why a salesman panics every time he sees a motorcycle gathering dust in the corner, one must first understand who the real owner of that bike is. Most riders walk into a dealership and assume the local owner has bought all those bikes in cash, that they are his property, and that they are simply waiting for someone to come along and take them by paying a profit margin. Nothing could be further from the truth. Dealerships do not own their inventory, they rent it. There is a financial system called inventory financing, known in the sector as floor planning, and it is the engine that moves the entire automobile and motorcycle industry. It is also a ticking time bomb. Here is how it works. Imagine a dealership orders 50 new bikes from the manufacturer for the spring season. They do not pay for them with a check. What happens is that a bank, usually the manufacturer's own finance company or a giant lender like Wells Fargo, pays the factory for those bikes. The dealer receives the units, places them in the showroom, and from that moment starts paying rental interest to the bank for every day each motorcycle remains in their possession. During the first 60 or 90 days, the manufacturer is usually kind. They may subsidize that interest to give the dealer a breather, a honeymoon period, so they can sell the bikes without pressure. In those 3 months, the dealer is relaxed. The bike is an asset, it's shiny, it represents a potential profit. But at the exact moment the clock strikes day 91, everything changes. The subsidy ends, interest rates skyrocket, and the bank starts demanding curtailments. A curtailment is a mandatory payment applied to the principal value of the bike. The dealer isn't just paying interest now, they have to start paying back the money the bank paid for the motorcycle. That money comes directly out of their cash flow, out of their operating budget. Suddenly, that bike stops being an asset and becomes a parasite. It is draining resources, occupying space that could be dedicated to fast-turning models. It needs insurance, it needs battery tenders, and it needs staff to clean the dust off it. A bike that spends 6 months, 9 months, or, God forbid, an entire year at the dealership is leading the business to ruin. This financial panic is what dictates every single decision a sales manager makes. When you see a salesman with a face of desperation at the end of the month, he isn't just trying to earn a commission, he is trying to stop the bleeding from an old unit for which the shop owner is screaming at him. And this leads us to the first strategy. The desperation, discount. The first strategy, when the bank squeezes. When the bank starts calling and the interest piles up, the dealership resorts to the most basic tool it has, the discount. They start by cutting the invoice price. They eliminate shipping fees, they waive preparation costs, they do whatever it takes so that the bike goes out the door and the bank stops calling. But sometimes even the most aggressive discount is not enough. Sometimes the motorcycle simply does not spark any interest, and when that happens, they have to resort to more creative strategies. The shell game, interchange of inventory between dealerships to reset the financial. This is one of the most common and least known practices by the general public. Dealerships rarely exist in a vacuum. They are usually part of larger groups or maintain friendly relationships with other dealerships of the same brand. What they do is exchange inventory. It works like this. Imagine a dealership in Florida that has a bunch of sport bikes that nobody wants because the roads are straight and flat, but it needs cruisers because Bike Week is approaching. At the same time, a dealership in Ohio is full of cruisers that are not moving, but it has customers asking for sport bikes for the track season. The managers call each other, reach an agreement, and load the bikes onto a truck. They exchange the problem children. Why do they do this? It is not just to balance the inventory, it is to reset the clock. Psychology plays a fundamental role. If a local customer visits the same dealership month after month and always sees the same dusty motorcycle in the same spot, that bike becomes invisible. The customer assumes something must be wrong with it. The salesmen get tired of seeing it and stop trying to sell it. It becomes just another piece of furniture. But when that same bike arrives at a dealership in another state, it is new inventory. The salesmen there have not failed at selling it 50 times. They are excited to have something new to show. The customers who walk in have not seen it before. To them, it has just arrived. "We just got this one in," the salesman says. And technically, it is not a lie, even if the bike has spent a year stored in a Miami warehouse. It is a way of moving the chairs on the deck of the Titanic, with the hope that a change of scenery, a new audience, and a refreshed sales team will find the buyer who did not appear on the other side of the country. Punching. Self-selling to reach bonuses and how it turns new bikes into used ones without rolling a single meter. When the year nears its end and manufacturers pressure to present brilliant sales figures to their shareholders, dealerships resort to a more drastic strategy. It is called punching. The dealer registers the bike as sold but not to a real customer. They sell it to themselves or to a shell company linked to the dealership or declare it as a demonstration or service loaner unit. By doing this, two things happen. First, the manufacturer records a sale in its books, so they are happy. Second, the dealer reaches the volume target and receives their bonus, a check that can be large enough to cover the loss they will suffer on that bike. But there is a catch. At the moment a motorcycle is registered, the warranty begins to run. The bike technically becomes used in the eyes of the manufacturer, even if it has 0 kilometers on the odometer. The dealer moves it from the new section to the second-hand section. Why would they do this? Because of the minimum advertised price rules. Manufacturers impose strict rules on the minimum price at which a new bike can be advertised. They do not want to devalue the brand, but for a used bike, those restrictions do not exist. The dealer can advertise that $18,000 bike for $12,000 without the factory finding them. They can slash it to the minimum just to get rid of it. If you have ever seen a current year bike online with only 5 kilometers advertised as used or a demo with a deep discount, you are looking at a bike that has been punched. It is a desperate measure to clean up the accounts and stop the floor plan bleeding. The spiff, internal bribes to salesmen to move problematic units. When the discount does not work, when the exchange does not work, when the punch has already been used, the dealer has one last ace up their sleeve, motivating the sales force. This is called a spiff. It is a special cash bonus paid directly to the salesman for moving a specific unit. The general manager walks into the Saturday morning sales meeting, points to the dusty bike in the corner, and announces $500 in cash for whoever sells that bike today. Suddenly, the sales team has a new priority. They stop showing customers the bikes they want to see and start directing them toward the reward bike. "Oh, are you looking for a cruiser? Have you considered this German one? It's much better than a Harley. Do you want a naked bike? Look at this one, it's a special edition." They become aggressive, persistent. If you have ever felt a salesman pushing too hard to convince you of a bike you hadn't asked for, it is very likely there was a spiff involved. The dealer is willing to sacrifice part of their margin to pay the salesman just to remove that financial liability from their inventory. These are internal bribes, and they happen every weekend in dealerships across the country. This financial framework is what dictates which bikes survive and which are condemned. But there are specific models that, due to their characteristics, become perpetual hostages. These are the 5 motorcycles that dealerships cannot give away. Number 5. BMW R18. We have reached the first victim on this list, a bike that was promoted as the ultimate machine, the Harley-Davidson killer, Bavaria's attempt to snatch the American cruiser market from Milwaukee. The BMW R18 is, on paper, a work of art. Its engine is the massive 1800 cubic centimeter air and oil-cooled boxer, the largest BMW has ever manufactured. 91 horsepower and a beastly 117 foot-pounds of torque that push you from idle with astonishing mechanical smoothness. The aesthetic is a statement of intent. The exposed drive shaft spinning in the open air, deep mirror-like chrome, hand-painted pinstripes on the tank, that feeling of having sculpted the bike from a single block of German granite. A new R18 starts at $18,000 for the base model, but the transcontinental touring versions with massive fairings and audio systems can exceed $25,000. That places it in direct competition with the Harley-Davidson Road King and the Street Glide, 2 heavyweights of the segment. So why is this engineering marvel rotting in dealerships from California to New York? The answer is as simple as it is devastating. It is an ergonomic disaster for its target audience. The defining characteristic of the R18, that massive boxer engine with cylinders protruding to the sides, is also its fatal flaw. Those cylinders occupy exactly the space where a cruiser rider wants to put their legs. You cannot install forward controls on an R18. You are stuck in a mid-control foot peg position that ends up hurting your hips after a while. On a long trip, you cannot stretch, you cannot move your feet. The engine keeps you immobilized like a poorly adjusted saddle. Furthermore, it is incredibly heavy. We are talking about nearly 800 pounds in the touring versions. Moving it at low speed requires a strength and technique that not everyone has. But the underlying problem is deeper. The R18 doesn't know who it wants to please. The typical BMW rider looks for technology, cornering performance, touring capability. They buy a GS or an RT. The typical cruiser rider looks for the sound, the vibration, the infinite customization of a Harley or an Indian. The R18 stays in a no man's land. It is too bulky for sport bike lovers and too strange for traditional cruiser lovers. The result is a magnificent motorcycle that cannot find a buyer, one condemned to gather dust in corners while salesmen sigh every time a truck arrives with a new unit. Number 4. Suzuki Katana. The next condemned one is a bike that looks incredible in photos, that makes you fall in love at first sight in showrooms, but that systematically refuses to leave the exhibition floor. We are talking about the Suzuki Katana. When Suzuki resurrected the legendary Katana name, the motoring world shivered. The original design from the 80s is iconic, a piece of industrial design signed by Target Design, and the new version perfectly captures that sharp samurai sword aesthetic. It looks fast even standing still with those angular lines and that aggressive front end that does not go unnoticed. The specifications are undeniable. It uses the engine from the GSX-S 1000, the legendary K5, a 1,000 cubic centimeter inline four-cylinder that delivers around 150 horsepower. It is an engine that screams, that revs up with astonishing ease, and that has a sound that makes your hair stand on end. It features traction control, ABS, Brembo brakes, and decent electronics. The price is around $13,800, competitive for what it offers. So what is the problem? Why do Katanas pile up in dealerships while the competitors' naked bikes fly off the shelves? The fatal flaw lies in the fuel tank. To achieve that sharp, stylized design line, Suzuki gave it a tank of only 3.2 gallons. It is tiny on a 1,000 cubic centimeter bike that, by its character, invites you to be heavy on the throttle. That capacity is a bad joke. The real-world range is barely 100 miles before the reserve light comes on. 100 miles. That means you are stopping at gas stations every hour and a half, 2 hours at most. For a bike that could be a great travel companion that has the power and mechanics to eat up miles, that limitation kills it. Riders looking for a high-displacement naked bike want to enjoy themselves, not constantly be staring at the fuel gauge. The Katana is a bike for going to grab a coffee and coming back, not for ringing it out on a twisty road, and that mismatch between its warrior image and its scooter-like range condemns it to ostracism in the showrooms. Number 3. Livewire Stu Del Mar. The third condemned one is a bike that represents the future, or at least that is what we have been told. Livewire, the spin-off brand from Harley-Davidson, was born with the mission of being the modern, avant-garde, and urban answer to the problem of electric mobility on two wheels. The S2 Del Mar was the bike that was going to attract the masses. It didn't cost $40,000 like the original Livewire. Instead, it was supposed to be more accessible. On paper, the specifications are truly attractive, 84 horsepower, and an impressive 194 foot-pounds of torque. Being electric, that torque is available from 0 revolutions, which means it launches like a missile. It accelerates from 0 to 60 in exactly 3 seconds. It weighs 436 pounds, a manageable figure, and the design is groundbreaking, with that flat tracker style that is so cool. The retail price is $15,500, which isn't cheap, but it's not the absurdity of the first generation either. So why is it already being called the electric ghost? Why are dealerships disconnecting charging stations to save electricity? The answer is a lethal combination of range anxiety and price. The city range is 113 miles, which seems adequate for commuting, but the highway range at 55 miles per hour plummets to just 70 miles. And let's be honest, who goes 55 on an American highway? At real-world speeds of 75 or 80 miles per hour, that battery drains faster than an ice cube in the desert. You might get 40 or 50 miles of fun riding before anxiety forces you to look for a plug. Dealerships were forced to invest in expensive fast charging stations to sell these bikes, investments of tens of thousands of dollars. Now those stations sit there unused while the bikes remain lined up with 100% battery gathering dust. The early adopters, the techies who always want the latest thing, already bought theirs and moved on. The average rider isn't interested. They don't want to worry about whether or not they will make it to the next town. And the worst part is that every passing month, battery technology advances, leaving the S2 Del Mar a bit more obsolete, a bit less attractive. It is an asset that depreciates faster than any other bike in the dealership, a financial black hole. But there is a deeper reason why the S2 Del Mar is rotting in dealerships, and it has to do with identity. Harley-Davidson buyers buy heritage, they buy noise, they buy the weekend ritual. The Livewire, being electric, offers none of that. It is silent, it is clean, it is modern, but it is not a Harley. And electric bike buyers, for their part, look at Livewire and see a brand with internal combustion DNA trying to look modern, but with a higher price than more specialized competitors like Zero or Energica. The S2 Del Mar just doesn't quite fit anywhere. It is too expensive for the urbanite looking for an electric scooter, too radical for the traditional rider, and too limited in range for those who want to travel. It is a bike floating in a commercial limbo from which it is very difficult to escape. And meanwhile, batteries degrade, technology moves forward, and the discount needed to sell it grows with every passing month. Number 2. Honda XL 750 Transalp, US version. Sometimes a bike fails not because it is bad, but because it does not fit the specific needs of the market in which it is sold. This is the case with the Honda XL 750 Transalp, a bike that is legendary in Europe, where roads are narrow and curves are infinite, but in the United States, it is gathering dust in dealerships. Honda brought back the Transalp name to compete with the Yamaha Tenere 700 and the Suzuki V-Strom 800DE in the middleweight adventure segment, a category that is booming. The specifications are solid. The engine is a 755 cubic centimeter parallel twin that delivers 83 horsepower. It is agile, fun, has electronics, riding modes, and Honda's infinite reliability. The price is attractive, $9,999. It is cheaper than the competition. So why isn't it selling? Because Honda, in its strategy to reduce costs for the American version, removed key equipment and American riders noticed instantly. First, it comes with tube-type tires mounted on spoked rims. In 2026, the adventure rider wants tubeless tires because if you get a flat in the middle of nowhere, repairing a tube is a nightmare. The V-Strom 800DE also has tubes, but it has better suspension. The Tenere also has tubes, but it has a legion of fans and superior off-road performance. Second, and this is inexcusable, it has no cruise control. For a bike called Transalp, designed to cross the Alps, to do long distances, not including cruise control on a bike with a ride-by-wire throttle is a mortal sin. Americans travel hundreds of miles of straight interstate to reach the trails. Without cruise control, that trip becomes an ordeal. The Transalp is a great bike, but it arrived in the American market limping with one hand tied behind its back, and buyers realized it. Number 1. Kawasaki Eliminator. And we have reached number 1, the bike that tops this list of the condemned. It is not an ergonomic disaster like the R18, nor does it have a range flaw like the Katana, nor does it suffer from technological anxiety like the Livewire, nor is it missing key equipment like the Transalp. The Kawasaki Eliminator is a victim of something much more subtle and devastating. It is a victim of its own mediocrity. It isn't bad, it isn't ugly, it isn't expensive, it is simply forgettable. Kawasaki resurrected the famous Eliminator name to compete in the burgeoning entry-level cruiser market. They wanted a piece of the pie that the Honda Rebel 500 has been devouring for years. The specifications are decent. It uses the 451 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine derived from the Ninja 400, but with an increased stroke to achieve more torque. About 45 horsepower that performs well. The seat height is very low, 28 inches, making it accessible for riders of any stature. The starting price is $6,649, which is competitive. It has a modern, low and long cruiser aesthetic. So what is the problem? It is invisible. It is trying to compete with the Honda Rebel 500, which is an absolute icon. The Rebel has a massive aftermarket, a reputation proven over years, and a distinctive style that makes it unmistakable. The Eliminator, on the other hand, has a generic look as if it were designed by a committee that wanted to make sure they didn't offend anyone. It doesn't provoke passion, it doesn't spark desire. Salesmen say that people sit on it, find it comfortable, see no flaws, and then leave and buy something else, either a Rebel or a used Harley Sportster or any bike that has some personality. The Eliminator is the bike that answers a question nobody asked. It is perfectly adequate but perfectly bland. And in the world of motorcycles where emotion and passion are everything, a lack of personality is a death sentence. It is the queen of the condemned, the one that will never find a home because nobody falls in love with it. From the financial weight of the floor plan to the final destination in the cold wholesale auctions, the journey of an unsold motorcycle is a true nightmare. We have seen how German engineering trips over ergonomics, how design can kill functionality, how technology becomes obsolete before it's sold, how cost-cutting stifles a great project, and how a lack of personality condemns a bike to absolute oblivion. The next time you see that dusty bike in the corner of the dealership with the faded tag and the dead battery, remember, it is not just a motorcycle, it is a financial hostage waiting to be rescued.